Good morning. First of all, up for bid is going to be an RCBS Green Machine in 40 caliber Smith & Wesson. Machine has very little use on it, a couple thousand rounds I would guess. And what I've done is took off the original cassette case feeder and put on a single stack feeder, and all you do, take a small handful of brass, drop it in, and you can maybe see them dropping into the thing. So there you see it's full. Well, maybe you can see it, but anyway, it's full. It holds about 25 empty cartridges. All right, the second thing that has been done to this machine to make it about 99% reliable is it has a Dillon primer feed tube mounted on it, and the weak point of this machine originally was the primer feed. It was a terrible system. Now, one other thing that I've done, excuse me for getting in front of it, I made a primer feed rod. Okay, that simply goes in like so and follows your primers down. Well, one thing else that it does is that on the last round, it actually locks open the primer bar so you know it's out of primers. So I'm going to move in a little bit so you can see that better. So when you operate the handle, see if I can get some more light on this too. When you operate the handle, okay, when this primer transfer bar comes out, this rod is long enough that it drops in the hole where the primer would normally be, and as you see, this stays open. This lets you know that you're out of primer, so you don't, keep on trying to load. Now I'm going to get back and turn the camera around and take some pictures of this thing in operation. Before I reposition the machine, on top of the primer feed tube is a little nylon bushing, and included will be a Dillon primer pickup tube. So this one has already been filled, and you simply set this on top. It'll actually stand up by itself, but I hold it. Pull a little hairpin cotter, and you just loaded 100 primers. So now it's ready to go. Alright, before you start using the machine, I always do a few things. Okay, first of all, make sure you have primers, which I've already shown you how to fill. Make sure that you have cases in the case feeder. And of course, last but not least, pull the lid off and make sure you have powder. Okay, and this I'm loading with 5 grains of 231, and it's a very nice shooting, very accurate load. So that's how it'll come set up. You're of course welcome to change anything you want. Okay, secondly, when you start, when you actually get in the process of loading, there are 2 pins located back here that you have to push in on the top stroke to engage the powder rotor feed. So make sure you do that. And of course, when you stop loading, when you run out of brass coming across, make sure you disengage it, because if you don't, you'll have powder all over down here in the transfer pawls and etc. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and load up a few rounds. These are 175 grain cast lead bullets that I made years ago. And to start, of course, pull your lever one time, Okay, it came out and grabbed a new primer, and it brought in the first piece of brass. Pull the lever the second time, back, and it inserted the primer in the bottom. Now here's where you have to make sure and engage your powder rotor. Now it charged this station with powder, and it moved it over to the third station. The nice part of the thing I like about this Green Machine is you simply drop the projectile up here, and in this station it actually preseats it, so to speak, so you don't have to try to get it lined up with your fingers. And now in this station, of course, it's going to actually do the final depth of the seating of the bullet and do the crimping. So from here on out, all you do is pull the lever. And a lot of the speed depends on how agile you are. Heading towards 80 years old, I'm getting a little bit fumble-fingered, but still, you know, you can crank out 700 to 800 rounds an hour with this machine. And now don't forget, every once in a while you have to stop and throw some more brass into the feeder. And I try to do that when I run out of lead bullets in my left hand when I'm feeding this thing. Now if you notice, I stopped with the press down. Everything, the head of the press is down, and this keeps you from being confused as to whether, you know, have you put a bullet in here, because if you don't do that, it's easy to try to put 2 bullets in this feeder because they drop down where they're hard to see. But anyway, and then you continue on. Now, there's a lot of claims out there on how fast you can load, and you know, I don't really load for speed. I do it for enjoyment. So now I'm out of lead again, so I just take some more cases, throw them in the feeder, and down they come. This machine, I can just on an average day, I load about 10 to 12 rounds in 40 seconds. So that would be 500 rounds in 30 to 35 minutes. So if you take that on one more time, it'd be 1,000 rounds an hour. Now, you'd be hard pressed to do that, because don't forget, you got to reload your primer feed, you got to reload your powder, you got to do, I've got a bunch of Dillon pickup tubes back here. I preload them, and you know, it takes me about 7 minutes to load up 500 primers in the primer tubes. So you take that all in consideration. And on it goes. This is about all I can tell you about the press. It rarely skips a beat. The main thing that'll stop you if you're reloading range brass is a 9mm case stuck in the mouth of the 40, and that will not feed out. There's a stop in here that will only let one cartridge out at a time, and it's set, the tolerance is pretty tight, and so if you have a 9 come down through it, you'll have to pull this out. And it's not hard to do, but you know, you have to catch the cases so they don't fall all over. But anyway, that's just about all I can tell you about it. If you have any questions, email me when I list it on eBay. Thanks.
Also included with this purchase comes a original RCBS Green Machine press cover, and this is the original primer feed, with the actuator rod. This is one of the original primer feed trays. The alignment tools and a wrench, and not an original, of course, bullet catch tray. Sits up underneath like that. And then here's the Dillon primer pickup tube. And by the way, these pieces on the end that retain the primers when you're picking them up do wear out, but Dillon replaces them at no charge. And then here is the primer follower rod that goes into the primer feed tube on the press. Alright, last but not least, I'm going to try to get some fairly good close-ups of this to show you just how good a shape this press is in. Here's the front. Side. Very clean, no rust. The back. And here's a good shot of the back side of those pins that you have to engage. Top pin, bottom pin, and they engage into the powder rotor that's on the back of the little dandy feed onto that disc. Last side, and I don't think I've discussed it, but this is the discharge chute. And if you position this tray under here, this direction, not the other direction, it will catch the bullets as they come out. Not 99% of them will not fly out of the tray unless you maybe let this get too full. Now, when you get this thing, the primer feed, or the case feed tube is going to be removed. Okay, you simply turn it and pull it out. All right, now this bowl will be off the top, and if you notice, the top pulls out and this retainer goes up. So when you get it, you're going to slide the bowl back on, push it in all the way, simply line it up here, push it down until it bottoms out, and give it a turn. Okay, that's it with the video. I'll stop boring you.